And I think it is not only for us as an 81-year-old group having this first EV company listed in Indonesia. I think it is good for the whole Indonesian market, because at the end of the day, people talk about electrification story in Indonesia, starting from the upstream, but for the downstream and hopefully the future OEM story can be available is something to be proud of, and also it is in a bigger scheme of decarbonization story for Indonesia. So yes, we're very happy.
Yeah, Mr. Bakri, this is JP Ong. I guess I want to start off with that question when I set things up for our interview today. Why go into buses rather than cars? Is there more promise right now to start with buses over, say, the passenger vehicles in Indonesia? Can you give us an idea of what guided your short-term strategy here?
Yeah, actually quite simple. Public transportation is 1/3 of the carbon emission polluter in Indonesia. And not many people know this. Indonesia, despite just the 4th largest country in the world, has 220 buses across the nation. And in Jakarta alone, has 10,000 buses. So if you come here and you see a lot of pollution, that's one of them, right? So we think it's a big market, and it is in the area of public transportation. So it has a lot of public positive consequences as well, other than the financial positive consequence. For example, JP, the first batch of our buses, starting about 14 months ago, we have already transported 10 million people. So we think that the first love for EV in Indonesia is actually in the buses. No sound, no smell, and so on. And also quite impressive, I think, 5.5 million tons of carbon dioxide saving. This equal like 250,000 trees planted. And plus, it's reducing the government subsidy. As you know, Indonesia is still net oil importer. And of course, the operator of this bus rapid transit is quite happy with 80% of the reduction of the OPEX. But all in all, we are working with a good partner, UID. We started quite early, 4 years ago. Back then, JP, there was no regulation, so you cannot issue registration plate. Mm-hmm. So we had to work hard with policymakers, regulators, so that later on in 2019 there is the presidential decree. But at the end of the day, you know, back then if you don't have any cylinder in the engine, there is no CC, you cannot have registration plate. But now you can, even with no decibels, no sound.
So, Mr. Bakri, critics of electric vehicles like to point out that there are concerns about the length of range, at least, of cars. And you might argue that it's even more important for passenger buses, especially given how notorious Jakarta is with regards to their traffic and also the charging times. Just how viable and how quick is it to charge these batteries, and what kind of range can we expect, especially in the special situation that is Jakarta's traffic?
Thank you very much for the question. In fact, 1.5 hours of charging is equal to 350 kilometers. And in the bus rapid transit, actually the longest in the world is in Jakarta, it is 250 kilometers. So it is one solution that is good for public transportation, but also it is a good early days kind of like infrastructure play, knowing that 1.5 hours can get you 350 kilos in your home depot. So that's why we are very much excited that maybe more and more buses, not only in Jakarta, but also in other parts of Indonesia can adopt this. Because, you know, JP, vector, like in physics, is magnitude times direction. The direction is clear. We're going to the net zero, electrification, and so on. But the magnitude, as I mentioned, is huge for public transportation. And I think to focus on that is amazing. And later on, I would like to also talk about our ambition to produce the buses in Indonesia. And who knows, later on we can be our own OEM, right? India has many OEM in heavy mobility, bus and truck. China has many OEMs. I think Indonesia has a place for one. So after buses, we would like to look at trucks. 5.5 million trucks in Indonesia. The government has mandated that in 2040, we have to start having all of them electrified. So it's a big market.
Pak Anindya, this is Christine. Correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, you're the OEM for BYD when it comes to EV buses and trucks. You're looking to build local assembly facilities for buses and trucks in partnership with BYD. How much of this tie-up with the Chinese EV maker gives you access to their proprietary EV technology?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Christine. At the end of the day, we know what we can do. We know what we need to partner. In terms of battery, BYD is the best in the world. They have the technology, and it is rocket science, right? We think so. But other than that, we can build our own in Indonesia. Our group has been in the auto parts business for 47 years, and we have been doing auto parts for commercial vehicles. So doing a factory, which we hope to be one of the largest, if not the largest in Southeast Asia, for buses and trucks is something that we feel comfortable with the help of our partner. And again, this is a story for Indonesia to not only talking about the downstreaming of the critical materials to make the powders or the materials for battery, but we can also start thinking from the end user device. So we are quite happy with that.
Yeah. But quick last question before we let you go. Correct me if I'm wrong. You've got 100% market share of the EV bus market in Indonesia, correctly? It's literally a monopoly. If true, what I'm interested in finding out is it simply because you've got first mover advantage, or is this the result of, is it by design? Is it because of licensing?
Well, I think this is more first mover advantage, Martin. You know, it is a free market. There will be more players, and I think it's good for the market. But I think, you know, as a first mover advantage, you got the good and the bad and the ugly, but at the same time, you got the market share for now, right? And for us, again, as an old group focusing in different sectors, it's something that we are very proud to bring Indonesia to the map, right? And last thing I want to say, look, below the ground, Indonesia has a lot of critical materials. Above the ground, we have the renewable energy potential with technology while protecting biodiversity. So I think, you know, this green industrial revolution can actually happen.
All right, coming up next, Indonesian conglomerate Bakri and Brothers successfully listing its EV unit Vector earlier this week. We'll ask Bakri CEO how the company intends to deploy the money that it's made in an exclusive CNBC interview. That's coming up when we come right back after this.